Good afternoon, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live once again in Mackey Arena, this time following Purdue's thrilling and probably stressful for you 81-78 win over Ohio State. I will warn you, there's a photographer upstairs working on his strobe lights, so if this goes all Studio 54 on us here, that explains it. I cannot be held responsible for any neurological issues that could be triggered because of the flashing lights. Purdue beats Ohio State 81-78. This is your wrap video, obviously. Thank you to the Purdue Union Club Hotel and the 811 Bistro for your support of these silly little videos. We appreciate it as always. I'm sitting about 15 feet, probably. I'm pointing again to a spot on the floor, knowing full well you can't see any of my appendages. So I don't know why I'm pointing, but right over there is where Jaden Ivey hit the game-winning three-pointer, his second buzzer beater to beat the Buckeyes. Say that 10 times fast, everybody. Buzzer beater to beat the Buckeyes. Buzzer beater to beat the Buckeyes. Buzzer beater to beat the Buckeyes. I guess I can do it. I have to give Jaden Ivey a lot of credit, not just for making the game-winning three-pointer, but for admitting immediately after the game that he screwed up the last play, and that's not what was supposed to happen. He could have just beaten his chest after the game about making the shot. He could have framed himself as the man, all that stuff. But he admitted right off the bat, hey, I screwed up the play. It was my fault. Good for him. I don't know if it would have come out otherwise, that that wasn't what Purdue was looking for, but good for him. How much humility do you have to have about you to be secure enough in yourself to be a player of Jaden Ivey's stature and just come right out and admit you screwed up the last play before you unscrewed up the last play? Supreme talent, and Jaden Ivey is the most gifted player Purdue's had since Glenn Robinson. Supreme talent has a funny way of erasing mistakes, and I'll take you all the way back to 2000, way back in the day when I was just a wee boy. Drew Brees against Ohio State. This is what this reminded me of. Drew Brees against Ohio State here. Rose Bowl on the line, as it turned out, throws a horrific interception in the fourth quarter. Horrific. One of the worst interceptions in a big moment I think you'll probably ever see. Seemed like it cost Purdue the game. Shortly thereafter, Drew Brees comes back, throws probably the most iconic pass in the history of Purdue football, the touchdown to Seth Morales to beat Ohio State. Purdue doesn't go to the Rose Bowl without that. One of the most memorable moments in the history of the program. One of the more memorable moments in a legendary career for Drew Brees. Obviously, that's what this kind of reminded me of, is Jaden Ivey screwed up the play. Jaden Ivey fixed it. And but he could have just left this. He could have just left the narrative. I hate that word. Why did I use that? He could have just left the story as Jaden Ivey makes the game winner. He didn't have to spit right out in the press conference that he screwed up the final play, and thus it became a redemption story instead of a hero shot story. Anyway, good for Jaden Ivey, who, Matt Painter said Purdue was lucky to have the basketball gods on its side today, and that may be true, but Purdue is very fortunate to have Jaden Ivey on its side every night, because he is absolutely special. Enjoy him while you can, because he is an extraordinary player, and he was extraordinary when it mattered most today. Second time in 2 years against Ohio State. That's got to be something Chris Holtman sees in his sleep at night when he closes his eyes. Jaden Ivey obviously made the game winner, but I think what got Purdue through this is the fact, I said a lot before the game, and I've been beating this horse to death, that Purdue has had to sort of prove that it can win, low-scoring Big Ten rock fights, games where Big Ten stuff matters more, if that makes any sense. Big Ten basketball values matter a little more than they do otherwise. And while this ended up an 81-78 game, and not one of those 60-something to 60-something or even 50-something to 50-something games, or even a low 70s game, I jumped all over the map there, didn't I? I do think that came out a little bit in Purdue today. They did win this Big Ten style to a certain extent, and that had everything to do not just with Ross-Ade pinning foul after foul on Ohio State like he was playing pin the tail on the donkey at a kid's birthday party, But Mason Gillis. I mean, Mason Gillis is your consummate. Like, if you biologically engineered a Big Ten basketball player, that's what might come out. Because he looks like a bouncer. He can make shots. He can make free throws. He takes care of the basketball. He will beat you up. He will take your lunch money and happily run away with it. He relishes it all. He loves it. And that is a Big Ten basketball player. And the things that win in Big Ten basketball are possessions, are rebounds, are physicality, and so on and so forth. And in the final 4:26, this is a remarkable statistic. Remarkable might be overstating it just slightly. This is a really notable note. A notable note. In the final 4 minutes and 26 seconds, assuming my chicken scratch notes are to be believed on the time, Mason Gillis had an offensive rebound of a Sasha Stefanovic missed three-pointer that he put back for 2 points. Later, he had an offensive rebound of a Travion Williams missed free throw that turned into an Eric Hunter three-pointer that I thought ended the game, as I'm sure a lot of you did. And then with 43 seconds to go, Jaden Ivey misses a three-pointer. Mason Gillis rebounds it, makes 2 free throws. That is 7 points in the final 4.5 minutes in a game where every point mattered extraordinarily, all off simply Mason Gillis offensive rebounding. That is a really, really notable note, and just really encapsulates the value he had in this game. He did a good job guarding E.J. Liddell for 39 minutes and 30 seconds until he got loose there for those 2 3-pointers. He was 0 for 5 from 3 prior to the final 33 seconds. And then Purdue has an egregious defensive breakdown with 33 seconds to go and then turns the ball over in the inbound for a quick 3 for him again. Just an incredible sequence there that I'm sure took many days off many of your lives, turned a lot of your hairs gray. But my point was Mason Gillis did a good job on E.J. Liddell for the better part of this game. Mason Gillis ended up with 11 rebounds, 5 offensive rebounds, 7 big points, made a big three-pointer at the start of the half when Purdue opened the second half really strong, in large part because of Mason Gillis. This is what I mean when I say you got to be able to beat people Big Ten style, and nobody encapsulates that better on Purdue's roster than Mason Gillis. I know Jaden Ivey made the game winner, had 21 points. I know Ross-Ade, stomped all over them for the better part of the day. But I think Mason Gillis was Purdue's most valuable player today because of all the intangibles, all the hidden impact he made in this game that really got Purdue home, especially in that last 5 minutes. I mean, that was winning Big Ten basketball if you've ever seen it. So give him a lot of credit for this game, obviously. The reality that this was a game in the final 4.5 minutes again, and Purdue was, one really tough shot away from going to overtime in a game it led by 20 in the second half, was another reminder that Purdue just has to keep growing into a place where they're just better with leads, better with big leads. I don't think Purdue necessarily fell apart with a big lead today as much as Ohio State did some things. The final 33 seconds were, not ideal because Purdue had an egregious defensive breakdown and then turned the ball over on the inbound. But that's the situation they found themselves in after Ohio State made that run. Had Purdue maybe done a little bit better job taking care of the basketball, maybe not fouled as much there in the few minutes that preceded all of this, Ohio State's run may not have gotten to the point where those 33 seconds unfolded the way they did. Big Ten basketball has a funny way of coming upon these moments where the team that's getting its head handed to it can make a run and can change the complexion of the game. You've seen it from Iowa twice against Purdue. You've seen it obviously from Wisconsin, obviously from Rutgers in the 2 games Purdue lost. But I think you saw it against Northwestern too. I don't think anybody ever thought that there was any chance Purdue was going to lose that game. But there was a moment there where Northwestern had strung together a couple baskets. I think Purdue turned the ball over. Northwestern gets out in transition, and they throw an absolute asinine lob pass that ends up a turnover when a bucket there, I think, gets them within 5 or something like that. I can't remember, and I'm basically just making stuff up at this point in terms of what actually happened in that circumstance. But I remember it being one of those slippery slope moments where if you were playing a team that ever made the right decision in a tight moment, and there's a reason Northwestern never wins close games. It's because its decision-making from its backcourt when things get tight really falls off a cliff. And that was a moment where Northwestern makes one good decision. They've got momentum. Maybe you start doubting yourself. Maybe the crowd starts to grumble. You never know. I don't think Purdue was ever going to lose that game, but maybe things would have played out a little bit differently from there had Northwestern just not bungled that so badly. My point is that these moments come no matter what the score. They seem to come no matter what the score is, no matter what the game conditions seem to be suggesting. And I think they came upon them again tonight, and Purdue maybe could have headed that off a little bit by just making sure that every single possession mattered to the nth degree. I think that's just NTH, not ENTH. I think it's just NTH. I've never learned to spell that, nth degree, to the nth degree. Every possession matters more in Big Ten play. Every possession matters, period. And I think Purdue's still got to do a little bit of a better job making sure that it maximizes the value, gets the best shot it can get, keeps the turnovers to a minimum, keeps hoarding possessions by not turning the ball over, but also by hitting the offensive glass. But that stuff, that's just a really, really important thing Purdue continue to grow into, a really important mentality that they need to grow into to make sure that they don't cost themselves games that they should win by allowing them to come back into play here. And as long as you're making 67% of your foul shots, if that's what Purdue's number even is right now, you're forfeiting precious margin for error. And I don't know what's going on with the foul shooting at Purdue. It comes a point in time where you are what your percentages say you are. But in this case, I tend to reject that because I think Ross-Ade has shown he's a much better foul shooter than this. I think Jaden Ivey has shown he's a much better foul shooter than what he was at Iowa. I think that was an aberration from a player who hadn't practiced very much. But Purdue has to make more free throws, obviously. And you're in a tough spot when your two most fouled and most gone-to players, or two of your top three fouled and gone-to players, are Ross-Ade and Travion Williams, and both of them, are struggling at the line. Ross-Ade is a good free throw shooter who's just not making them right now, I think. Matt Painter said some things technically after the game today that all could hold water, but Purdue's got to get these guys dialed in at the line, whether it's mechanically, whether it's concentration, whatever it might be, because you can't keep leaving double-digit points on the line against anybody, let alone Big Ten opponents here, and expect to keep getting away with it. Now, Purdue didn't get away with it at Indiana, one of a million reasons why that game went sideways on them. But that was what I'm talking. The Indiana game was what I was talking about before. Was that there's that moment where your own shortcomings allow the opponent to be empowered and allow the opponent to get momentum, allow Robert Finney to become Superman completely at random, and that's what cost Indiana or Purdue that game at Indiana. And I'm still talking about the Indiana game for some reason because it puts a face on a lot of the things Purdue has to be better at. But that's another game where Purdue missed double-digit free throws. The game at Iowa the other day, Purdue missed double-digit free throws. Didn't matter in the final analysis, but when it was a 4-point game in the second half, it sure did matter. This is a really long way of saying that making free throws is important, which I shouldn't have to use more than 6 words to convey. But it kind of falls into this overall mosaic of things that Purdue has to do better. Mosaic. Triple word score. This potpourri of things Purdue has to do better at all throughout the game, and not just when they're ahead by a little, not just when they're behind by a little, not just when they're behind by a lot. That's not really been the case, but all throughout the game, because these things have a funny way of all mattering when all is said and done when it comes to Big Ten basketball. So that's where Purdue has to continue to get better. They were fortunate to get away with this one. They were fortunate to have Jaden Ivey on their team. So good win for Purdue. Albeit a little harrowing. Survive in advance, right? Purdue needed this one badly. This is another quad 1 win for the NCAA tournament resume, but more importantly, this is another one that keeps you up to pace I don't know, up to speed. This keeps you at par in the Big Ten race here. You're going to need, obviously, there's still a lot of basketball left to be played. Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan State are all going to lose more games, but you don't want to put yourself 2 games behind. That's the one thing, Purdue did a good job of by winning at Illinois, things like that, was that you never got 2 games behind, I don't think. Maybe you did, I don't know. Anyway, Purdue kept the pace with the rest of the Big Ten contenders here, and that was absolutely critical. This also knocked Ohio State back a peg, which is really big too, because they're in that mix too. So just a really, really important win for Purdue today that you really had to have. I don't really throw the word must win around very often, but when you're, when you're at home and you're the better team, which I think Purdue is the better team against everyone it plays in the Big Ten, to be honest with you, you got to win. And Purdue found a way after Purdue was markedly the better team for 35 plus minutes here today. I'm just talking in circles again, so I'm just going to stick the landing here by saying, from Purdue's 81-78 win over Ohio State here in Mackey Arena, this is Brian Neubert from goldenblack.com. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. Thank you to the Purdue Club Hotel and the 811 Restaurant. We appreciate your support very much. I'll let you guys get back to your NFL games. I'm sure that's what most of you are watching. So thanks, everybody.